Today we're down at Savage Motorcycles, and today we've got the latest big adventure bike offerings from KTM. So this is their brand new updated for 2023 890 Adventure R, and this is the 1290 Adventure R. So interesting bikes, and riding them side by side is going to be interesting to see, you know, which one works better in which environment. So we're going to head out, get them on the dirt, on the road, spend a couple of days on them and see what they're all about. So come and join us for a ride. And this bike is probably, you know, where they see it as the Goldilocks bike, a bike that is, you know, ideally not too heavy, not too powerful, but got enough grunt. You know, a bike that you could travel around the world on, a bike that you could take out, as we'll do in a little while, get it on the gravel and have a play. And, you know, if you had enough talent, you probably can get it up some pretty gnarly tracks. Anyone who's watched KTM stuff over the year will watch the amazing Chris Birch do things on this bike that mere mortals can't. So probably don't take that into consideration for most people. But look, first impression, it feels like a light bike. It doesn't feel like a big adventure bike. It feels very solid, nimble. All the controls are very sharp. Yeah, so it you don't feel like you're on, you know, one of the really big heavy adventure bikes that you'd be a bit worried, hey, if I drop this thing, am I ever going to pick it up again? So like this, you know, road wise, it's on, you know, sort of a pretty ordinary, comes from the factory with, you know, just 50-50 sort of half road, half off-road tyres. So, but they're doing a good job here. It certainly handles like that, and when you squirt it, you know, that's got some mumbo. I really like the feel of the brakes. The brakes, things like the quick shift, the brakes, the suspension, all feel really positive. You know, very, you know, there's no vagueness about it. No, it's like you grab that front brake and the brakes are right there. So yeah, no, that very first jump on it, ride it, you go, gee, it feels like a nice, comfy. The ergonomics on it are really nice for me. I'm 5'10" or 177 centimeters, so seat height's 880, which interestingly is the same as the seat height on the 1290, because that used to be a lot higher. They've changed that a fair bit the last year or so. So yeah, it feels really upright, comfortable, plenty of leg room through your hips. You know, easier to stand up on. If it was my bike, I'd probably want a set of bar risers just to get it a fraction more comfy. But yeah, nice clear dash. So you got that really nice digital dash that you take sort of. It has got the old style KTM control block. So this has been updated on the 1290 on some of the road bikes. So I'm sure in the next year or so, I don't mind it, but the new one is definitely better. It's definitely easier to use, particularly it's a cold day today. It looks beautiful, but it's a bit chilly. So with big thick gloves and stuff, it's yeah, the new switchgear is really sweet. But you know, pump it out, sounds good. Got the quick shift, you know, just bang it through. And like this, you can really turn it in as a road, you know. So if you like carving up the roads, you're not going to be disappointed. That handle's really nice. I don't feel like I got to fight it to get it to handle nice. You just point it there and I go change direction, yeah, does that fine. So I've been riding the 890 for a little while now and got it off-road, so probably where it really belongs, this sort of environment. You know, these big, you have a look, big wide open fire trails and things, is probably where these bikes are actually going to spend a lot of time for most people. So yeah, I like what they've done this year, the styling, so you can see that the front fairings all integrated with a screen and everything. So I think that actually works better than the previous model. The actual bike itself is fairly well unchanged. WP suspension, the same basic brake setup, which is really good. The brakes on this thing are really special. This one's got, have a look, it's got the optional KTM bash guard, which I reckon you're going to need. Those tanks stick out a heck of a long way, and if you were to drop this off-road, I wouldn't want to do it without a set of bash guards on there, so I think that one you want to include in your budget for it. You know, I pretty much change the exhaust on every bike, and this is one that would really benefit from it. That can just chokes the thing. It sounds a bit, goes fine, but just doesn't sound that great, to be honest. So I think you change that over to an Acura or something, then yeah, you're going to have a really nice bike. Seat's pretty hard. There's a few options there. It'd be interesting when you I'll spend a whole day or so on it, see how well that comes up. Let's have a quick look at the dash and control side of things. So got the typical latest KTM TFT. This one's, I think it's 5.5 inch. The one on the 1290 is massive. It's 7 inch or something. And as I said, you got the switch blocks, which are sort of the previous generation KTM are in the throes of. They've changed that on the 1290, changed it on the Super Duke. I think they're changing it on most of their road bikes, so I think it'll flow through pretty quickly. So this weighs 200 kilos. Doesn't feel like it's a 200 kilo bike, I've got to say. It feels lighter than that. I think part of that's due to that new fuel tank design, you know, getting the fuel down low. So you've been out on the 890 for a little while now on the gravel, and it's a fun, impressive machine. I played around a bit with some of the settings. It's in off-road mode, but I found the traction control on was a bit too intrusive, so I've turned that off, and it seems to me to be transformed the bike. You know, you can hit this sort of stuff and then just let it go, and the bike will dance around a bit. But so, you know, the traction control will probably save you occasionally if you're not that experienced off-road. Otherwise you might find it a bit too intrusive. So, but the good thing is press a button, turn it off. But it's a really nice thing. The suspension's set up really firm, so that just needs playing around with. But for these sort of like fire roads, trails and stuff, gosh, it's a really fun toy. You could ride this all day, super comfy. You know, it soaks up the bumps big time, so you don't have to be too precise when you hit something. Yeah, it is a really nice. So I'm going to be interested, you know, I'll get out later today, tomorrow on the working out where I'm going on the 1290 on the same roads, and just see how that compares. But I've got the feeling this is probably where I enjoy riding the size of bike. But hey, you never know. Like that, yeah, just pop the front up, slide it out. Now it's 20, I think around the 26,000 mark, and then on top of that, of course, KTM want to charge you to unlock all their electronics, so that's going to cost you in Australia another $1,000. I reckon you're going to want a bash guard and an exhaust on it, and you're pretty well done, you know. So that's not cheap, you know. You're going to end up spending $28,000, but you're going to have a heck of a bike for that, let me tell you. It's going to be a lot of fun riding this, and it is one bike. If you only own one bike, you like the dirt, you like touring, you like traveling, this thing will absolutely do it all. It just eats this stuff. Oh yeah, that's fun. So on the 1290R now, straight away you feel like it is a much bigger and much heavier bike. There's, I think on paper, 21 kilos difference, but it does feel like more than that. Even getting the bike off the side stand takes more effort. You know, the 890 just feels like you pick it up and flick it across. And it's wider in the tank area, so it certainly feels like a wider bike, which is sort of strange when you think about it. The 890 is a parallel twin, cylinders side by side. This is a V-twin. You would think in some ways the V-twin would be narrower motor, but not a narrower bike anyway. Got an amazing screen, as you can probably see on this thing. I mean, it dominates the front dash area. Big 7-inch digital that you can, you know, pretty much program everything you want up on it. It's got all the different 4 different modes or whatever. Yeah, it feels a little bit actually more vibey than the 890. Just the motor resonance feels just a fraction. It's not bad, but you do feel a bit more vibration on this than I reckon I was feeling on the 890 5 minutes ago. This has got, as you can probably see if I look down there, you've got the newer switchgear, which is a bit easier. I got the bit easier to use with gloves on. They're both okay, but yeah. Standing wise, probably the same thing. Ergonomics feel really good. I just want probably a 25mm bar riser, make it really comfortable for me, but it's pretty good. It's got the adjustable screen at the front, and to be honest, for my height, the wind protection feels really good, but it did actually feel good on the 890 as well. I didn't feel like I was getting buffeted. So, but you can, that's right in the down position I think at the moment, or is that right? No, that's all the way up. So that's at the top, so maybe that's why it feels so good. Quick shift probably works a fraction better. It felt a little bit jerky on the 890, it's super smooth on this. So the 1290, it's got pretty impeccable road bike manners. You know, the ability to, you don't feel like you've got to fight with it or manhandle it. It's obviously got a crazy amount of grunt, you know. And there's a debate, you know, if you, obviously when you put it in off-road mode, it knocks the horsepower right back. And then in road mode, you know, you've got so much torque. It's like, it's a fantastic touring bike. And I think that's the debate you're going to get into over these two bikes. Is this the bike that you buy because you mainly ride, you know, out in the country, long distance, you know, and maybe 70% of the time you're on bitumen or a pretty decent gravel track, and 20 or 30% of the time, you know, you need a decent off-road bike. But it's going to take more effort and more talent to manage this in those situations than it's ever going to take to manage the 890. It is definitely an easier bike to ride off-road, but you know, this thing with, you know, 138 newton meters of torque or whatever is incredible for that, you know, long haul. You know, maybe if you had someone up, second up, or you're putting a lot of luggage on it, you know, you're not going to notice it on this thing. It's just going to absolutely cruise effortlessly all day. And I think this has got a 24 litre tank, so again, going to give you comfortable 350 into over 400k range. Yeah, and a pleasant, like a really nice, pleasant bike to ride. They've done some pretty interesting, this year's colour schemes, sort of a matte white, which looks pretty cool. Saw that when this is a 2022, the demo model, but when I picked it up, the brand new one, the 2023, was there, and the white does look really nice. Might be a bit of effort keeping it clean, but it certainly looks good. Yeah, so on nice, you know, twisty sections and whatnot, it really turns in nice. Track's really true. You know, it's slower to turn in because that 21-inch front wheel than a road bike, but very compliant. Softer ride on this than on the 890. The standard settings on this feel plusher and more comfortable, whereas the 890 felt really quite at the top end of firm, so need a little bit of work to set it up just right for me, but this is probably about ideal. The seat is more comfy on this, definitely say that. The one on the 890 is pretty much like a bit of concrete. So look, there's no debate, the 1290 is a really, really competent bike. I think it's a great bike. You want to be a bigger guy. If you're a short guy, it's a very heavy, you know, it is a fraction, feels a fraction lower than the 890, but it feels a lot heavier when you're trying to move it around manually. But it's a great bike if you want to do a lot of big mileage touring, and maybe more than half of that's going to be on the bitumen and just covering the miles all day. This thing will absolutely eat it up. That motor is epic, and you'd almost argue, are we getting to the point, and this is hard for me to say, where there's too much power in a big adventure bike? You know, the 890 is 77 kilowatts and this is 116 or something. It's a massive amount of grunt. 138 newton meters of torque. There are super bikes that would love to have that torque, so it is an absolute monster. And of course, the moment you put it in off-road mode, it knocks all that off, so you can't use it on the dirt, that's for sure. But look, it is a really competent. Ergonomics are nice on it. Obviously it's got a stunning dash, you know, as good as anything on a bike. Yeah, I just debate the wisdom of this if you're doing a lot of off-road work. As I say, unless you're a particularly big guy and you're a pretty competent rider, then the 890 is going to go to more places with the same person riding it than this will. So look, it's a fun bike when you get to the twisty bits. You know, for a big adventure bike, it's quite flickable and rideable. Suspension's great. I mean, it soaks up all this sort of stuff as you'd expect it to with no problem at all. And it just pulls like crazy. You know, so you can, this rough stuff is really good, you know, on the bitumen. It's got a great note to it. All good fun. So look, once you get the big 1290 on a gravel road like this, it just eats it. There's a few of the settings, you know, you've got an off-road mode which gives you a bit, whack it into rally mode, which then turns off the rear traction control, so you know, you're coming out of here, you can just light it up and dance it down the road. And also turn off the rear ABS. It's a really nice bike then. It feels, you know, really competent, capable. It's very planted, obviously, because it's quite heavy. So on this sort of, you know, surface where it'll walk around a little bit looser, it definitely does a good job. That extra weight does make the bike feel planted. And as I say, the tyres on it are just the standard sort of, you know, half road, half off road. So they're not the best. So, you know, you're going to get the thing to hook up every time you come out of a corner if you want. It's just going to dance on you. But, you know, it does this stuff fantastically well. It's more the next level when you get off into fire trails and then maybe even a single track. You know, it's going to be a fair bit of work to get this through. It'll do the job if you're good enough, but it's going to challenge you with the weight. But look, if you're touring Australia, you want to do lots of these dirt roads and stuff, gosh, it's a fun bike. So let's have a look at the 1290. It's the sort of look, not necessarily everyone likes that front. Great side profile, I mean, and this is the 2022, the 2023's gone to a white colour, but basically we're looking at the same bike. So if you have a look close up, you know, it's got, you know, really nice spec'd Brembos. You got the Explorer there. This is that fuel tank design. So the idea, if you look at it from behind, you'll see how wide it looks. It's a wide looking thing, particularly at the bottom there where you got the crash bars, because the fuel tanks, they're trying to get the weight down. And I had the previous generation which didn't have the low tanks, and I got to say, this is a lot nicer, a lot better to ride. They've lowered the seat height, they've lowered the fuel tanks. The last one felt like it was a giant of a bike, and you were, you know, very top heavy at low speed. So they've really done a good job upgrading this. Yeah, some of the other nice bits and pieces, it's all let's turn him on and have a look. So, you know, pretty epic looking dash there. Yeah, all the latest switch gear on it. So it's actually easier to use the stuff with gloves on, especially big thick winter gloves. Seat is nicer with that sort of recessed rally seat there, so it does drop it down to 880. The previous one was over 900, so it's the exact same height as the 890 Adventure, but this probably feels a little bit lower. I think because the shape of the seat's a bit more curved. They're quite different feeling machines when you ride them. So, but yeah, all the right components, all the right bits, Brembo's front and rear, WP suspension, and 23 litre tank on this. So it's actually a 20 litre on the 890, going to give you pretty much the same range. This thing, I imagine, will use a fair bit more fuel. With that motor makes some serious horsepower. So yeah, let's go and have a ride and have some fun. I think one of the things I'd say about riding these two bikes is, you know, KTM have been building really great dirt bikes for a long time, and both of these bikes are exceptionally good off-road. You know, so you are looking at the very top of the food chain. I think in terms of adventure bikes, it's you know, it's arguable, but it's hard to go past either of these. And you just look at that grunt. Oh my, that's ridiculous. And not out of a dirt bike, you know, venture bike, crazy. So yeah, these are both stunningly competent, capable bikes. So trying to pick a winner out of them is it's not easy. Now I do want to say thanks again to Jared and the guys at Savage Motorcycles for the chance to get out. I've been testing bikes for them for a little while now, and it's always a privilege. So thanks guys. If you're in the market for one of these, go and have a ride. Like honestly, they've got demos there. Go down and just take them for a ride and see what you think for yourself. But yep, they're both pretty special, fun bikes, and I absolutely, who wouldn't? I mean, the chance to be out riding on a day like today, perfect tracks, just get the thing to dance a little bit. How much fun is this? As a direct comparison is that the 1290 overall feels a bit softer. Suspension feels a bit softer. The brakes feel a little bit, you know, not spongy, but you know, they're not as exacting. But then the electronics on the 1290 are probably less intrusive. So if you're using those a lot, the quick shift on the 890 can feel quite snatchy if you're not really on it. This is 1290 smoother. Also the off-road traction control, if you're going to use that, the 890 tends to let you really hook it up and then sort of kills it off a fair bit, whereas the 1290 just feels like you've got less horsepower, and so it's modulating it a bit better. So yeah, probably a better electronics package on the 1290 than the 890. As I say, they both do the job, both work well, but it does have that kind of softer feeling about it on this. After a few days riding the 1290 Adventure R and the 890 Adventure R, comparing them and trying to work out which is the one that I would spend my money on, which is the better bike, then this is not it. It's the 890. It's lighter. It's making 100 horsepower, 100 newton meters of torque. The suspension's fantastic. That's a wonderful motor. It's a better all-round bike, I think, for the vast majority of people. If you want to take it off-road, it's going to go in more places than this. Even if you're a really good rider, you'll still be able to take that even more places, and it's a very, very capable. Now look, they're both great bikes. They're both at the top of their game for their particular categories. So unless maybe you're a particularly large guy and you just like that extra massive amount of grunt, I don't see much reason, to be honest, to buy this over that. But look, it's horses for courses. But if it's my money, I'm buying the 890 and I'm going to ride it anywhere at any time. You could travel around the world, you could take it out in the back tracks and have a lot of fun. It's a great bike. So hey, thanks for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you in the future.